Welcome to our first Writing Task 2 class. In Writing Task 2, you were asked to write an essay about a familiar topic, and some of the most common subjects are education, environment, traveling, family issues, and celebrity life. Your essay must have at least 250 words, and you will be penalized if you are unable to reach this number. However, you have to keep in mind that 250 words is the minimum number of words, and there isn't a maximum. In our experience, we have noticed that the students who were able to score band 7 or 7.5, for example, are the ones who write more than that, usually about 300, 320 words. So, we'd like to ask you to try to do the same. There are 4 kinds of essays in the IELTS test. Answer the questions, discuss both views, agree or disagree, and advantages and disadvantages. It's important to notice that each kind of essay requires a different paragraph structure and a different kind of introduction. But don't worry, I promise you that at the end of our course, you'll be able to master all of them. You already know that the writing test lasts for 1 hour and you have 20 minutes to write writing task 1 and 40 minutes to write writing task 2. You should begin your writing test with writing task 2 because writing task 2 is worth twice as much as writing task 1. So you begin your test by writing your essay, and then in the last 20 minutes you write writing task 1. Now, let's talk about the agree or disagree essay type to try to understand what it is like. In the agree or disagree essay type, students are supposed to agree or disagree with a given topic and give a clear opinion about it. This is probably the most common essay type in the IELTS and also the easiest one to write. To get a good score, you must use assertive reasons to support your point of view and give examples to illustrate what you're saying. I'm going to explain how you're going to do that in more details in today's class. For starters, let's take a look at 2 agree or disagree topics. I'll give you 1 minute to read them. Well, as you could notice, it's really easy to identify an agree or disagree essay because they will ask you the following question. To what extent do you agree or disagree with this opinion? I'll give you a very important piece of advice now. Avoid saying that you partly agree with this statement. It's better for you to choose a clear side. So that means you will either agree or disagree. Do not stay over the fence because this is going to make your life more difficult. It will be tougher for you to think about the main ideas to write in the body paragraph. So, okay, in real life, you partly disagree with the topic, but in the IELTS, you will either choose to agree or disagree, and this is it. Well, I think I've made my point, so now we can start talking about planning. Planning is the most essential step to succeed in this task. and it's the first thing you're going to do as soon as you finish reading the topic. A good planning will help you write a coherent and consistent essay. It is also a good way to make sure you will not repeat any ideas or contradict your point of view in the middle of your work. I advise you to spend no more than 3 minutes on the planning, as you need to have enough time to write your essay and revise your work if possible. You shouldn't skip planning, think that you are going to save time by doing that. Our experience has shown that planning helps the students write more and also to write better essays. So believe me when I say that you should plan your writing task too. Basically, there are 3 steps involved in the planning process. First, you have to decide whether you agree or disagree with the statement. Then, you have to come up with 3 reasons to support your point of view. Then, you have to think about examples to illustrate these ideas. But what exactly are you going to plan? Well, when I refer to planning, I'm talking about the ideas you're going to use in your body paragraphs. So let's take a look at an example to understand how a planning of a writing task 2 of the agree or disagree type is done. First, let's take a look at the topic. Every year, several languages die out. Some people think that this is not important because life will be easier if there are fewer languages in the world. To what extent do you agree or disagree with this opinion? So the first thing you have to do is to choose a clear side. So, as I'm a teacher of English and a language lover, I totally disagree with this statement. Obviously, it's not necessary to write that down. You just have to make the decision, and this is it. Then, you have to think about reasons to support your opinion. So, why do you agree or disagree with this statement? So, I chose the following arguments. Language is culture. When the language dies, the culture dies too. So I'm going to use this idea in my first body paragraph. In the second paragraph, I'm going to say that languages contain an accumulated body of knowledge, including information about geography, zoology, etc. In the third body paragraph, I'm going to say that speaking foreign languages is beneficial for the brain. And then I'm going to think about examples to support these ideas. So to support the first argument that language is culture, I'm going to say that when the British people invaded India, they imposed their language. It was the first thing they did because they wanted to make native people adhere to the British superior way of life. After that, to illustrate the idea that languages contain an accumulated body of knowledge, I'm going to explain that most of us will never know what Brazilian native people know about medicinal uses of plants because we don't speak their language, so we don't get to interact with them. And then, for the last argument, I'm going to say that studies show that bilingual people tend to be less affected by Alzheimer's. You don't have to provide one example for each paragraph, but you should. If you're able to think about examples for only 2 paragraphs, it's okay. That will be enough, but never less than that. However, I strongly advise you to write 3 body paragraphs because planning these 3 body paragraphs will help you write the minimum number of words and even surpass it. You have to keep in mind that you should always try to write more than the minimum number of words, even if you don't need band 7 or 7.5. Because when you practice at home, you're always more relaxed, so the ideas come much easier. On the day of the test, you have a lot of pressure and you tend to write less. What I'm trying to say is, if you write 250 words when practicing at home, that means you end up writing fewer words on the day of the test. So, at home, you should always write more than the minimum number of words. It doesn't matter what grade you want. Well, I've made my point clear, so now let's take a look at what your essay is going to look like if you plan it according to our instructions. Well, the first paragraph will always be the introduction. In any kind of essay, you have to write an introduction. And then you have your 3-body paragraphs with reasons to agree or disagree and examples to support these reasons. Paragraph 5 will be your conclusion, and this is it. So this is what your essay should look like. Now that planning is done, let's talk about the star of your essay, the introduction. You should write a very nice introduction because your introduction acts like a map which will show the reader what you are going to discuss, why you're going to discuss it, and what your opinion on the topic is. Moreover, it's crucial to begin your essay with a paragraph which will impress the examiner right from the start. An IELTS introduction should be divided in 2 parts, an opening statement and a thesis statement. The opening statement is the part of your introduction which should explain to the reader what your essay will be about. Its main purpose is to provide context and to draw the reader's attention to the topic. I'm going to teach you 2 different ways to write opening statements. If you have basic to pre-intermediate level of English, you can simply paraphrase the question. Paraphrasing means that you're going to rewrite the question using different words and possibly different grammar structures. This is a good solution if your aim is band 6.5 and under. If you need band 7, 7.5, you shouldn't use this strategy. So, what do you have to do? You should try to write something interesting about the topic, something which will make the reader feel really interested about it. I can assure you that if you use the second strategy, you'll be able to score higher. So, if you have the level, go for it. To illustrate what I'm saying, I'll show you 2 different examples of introductions which were written using these 2 different strategies, and I invite you to pay attention to the differences in level. I'll give you some time to read them before I make further comments. Okay, both introductions are good. Of course, they are interesting, but it's clear that the first one is much more simple and didn't provide any extra information about the topic. The second introduction has a different touch to contextualize the topic and uses more sophisticated vocabulary. You don't need to be an IELTS examiner to know that the second option deserves a higher grade. Well, now that you have already understood what an opening statement is, we're going to talk about the second part of your introduction, which is the thesis statement. Basically, the opening statement is the sentence that tells the reader what your opinion on the topic is. In the IELTS, you can and you have to use the first person singular, I, to express your own opinion. But you need to avoid basic phrases of opinion, such as I think, in my opinion, because this is too basic. Try to use more sophisticated structures as the ones you can find in the file called Useful Phrases for Writing Task 2. This file is in the same lesson as this presentation. I'm going to show you two examples of thesis statements. One for the more basic opening and another one for the most advanced one. The thesis statements are the sentences in bold, and I'll give you a few seconds to take a look at them. Let me draw your attention to two facts. One, take a look at the expressions of opinions that we used, as I see it and to my way of thinking. These expressions are much better than I think or in my opinion, right? So that's what we're gonna try to use in your essays. Two, you have to be careful not to give any spoilers of your ideas in the introductions when you explain why you agree or disagree with the topic. You have to try to give a more generic reason without being too specific. Before I move on, I just want to recap that the first thing you're going to do on the writing test is the planning. So after you do the planning, you have to write the introduction, and after that, you have to write your 3 body paragraphs, the 3 body paragraphs that you planned. So after you write the body paragraphs, it's time to write the conclusion, and that's exactly what I'm going to talk about now. In writing task 2, it is mandatory to write a conclusion, and you're going to be penalized if you forget or if you don't have time to write one. An effective conclusion restates the main ideas used in the body paragraphs of your essay. It should also contain your opinion on the question and make it clear how you feel about the issue, so you're also going to reinforce your opinion. But you have to be careful not to repeat the same language you use in other parts of your essay. Remember, showing a range of vocabulary and grammar is mandatory if you want to get a good grade. Also, begin your conclusion paragraph with a phrase that shows the reader that you are concluding, such as to sum up, in conclusion, or in summary. Now, I'll give you 1 minute to read these 2 sample conclusions. As you could notice, these are very objective and effective conclusions which reinforce and support the ideas we discussed in the body paragraphs, and this is it. At the end of every presentation, you'll find a list of useful phrases which you should use in your writing tasks. We prepared a different list of phrases for each kind of essay, so you have a vast range of materials to use. You can now write your first essay on our platform, and I wish you good luck on your first writing task too.